Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the Unfiltered podcast. This is literally your home, your place to come to if you want to combine the soul and the science of life and understand what it really means to be you, what it really means to be human, and how you get to move from living the default life, the default version, the survival version of who you are, into the life of the designer, into the life where it's literally effortless to create the timeline that you want to be on and create the experiences that you're here to create. I am your host, and it is such an honor to be here. I'm Dr. Courtney Spiteri, neuropsychologist, clinical neuropsychologist, gone rogue from my own personal development journey. And I am here today to go so much deeper into the story piece. Because as I shared in the last episode, I am not new to personal development. I have been in this world since I was a teenager, literally seeing my first psychologist, in my tweens, and then doing Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power at 16. I had the privilege of doing that. And I've moved through courses and programs, and I became a psychologist. I studied the brain and behavior for 10 years in different ways, an undergraduate in neuroscience, behavioral neuroscience, going on to do honors in psychology, going on to do a doctorate of clinical neuropsychology. Like, to say that I am well versed in this area is probably a little bit of an understatement. Yet, it took lifing for my soul to get this. For not only my soul to get this, but for my soul to be activated in such a deep way that my fucking human got it, right? That my human got it. I had all the textbooks. I can show you them. I had all the grades. I had all the things in my tool belt, but it's like I couldn't access them yet. And the more I work with women, the more I work with people in this way, you come into my world, it's very rare that you're beginning at zero. It's very rare that you've never worked with a therapist. It's very rare that you've never done energy work. It's very rare that you've never done a personal development program. And so what is it then? What's the missing link? Because what I find and what I found with myself and what I found with the clients that came into my world is that there was still this glass ceiling. It's like, yeah, I've done that. I've walked on the hot coals. I've done the energy work. I am an energy healer. I've done the Reiki. And I just can't get myself past this point to really flip from default to designer. And this is what I want to share with you today. This is the journey that I want to take you on, deepening into my own story as the catalyst for you to see what actually got to shift. Because as I said, it's not that I didn't have the tools. It's not that I hadn't been told the thing, but it just hadn't landed yet. It really hadn't landed until life lifed in such a profound way for me that I was actually allowed to access what my soul already knew. I was actually allowed to remember that my soul knew all this, that I had chosen all this to be here, to have this experience, and now to share it with you. And so I hope and I know there'll be some gold nuggets here that you take away. And if you love this conversation and you love what I'm about and you love what this movement is about, which is really reconnecting people back to who you are, after studying the brain and behavior for 10 years, I'm literally the one to say, don't listen to the brain, listen to your heart so you can reconnect back to this part within you. Hit the subscribe button. Wait for the next episode. This is just going to be such a wild journey that we get to be on together. So let's dive in. Let's just get into the nitty gritty piece of it. As I mentioned, I've been in this personal development world. You'll see behind me, I literally have like Atomic Habits, the power of now. Like, I've always been so keenly interested in understanding what it means to be a human and really understanding what it means to be fulfilled. And I did what I thought I needed to do. I got the degree. I could have started the career. I had the house. I had all these external validators that thought I would be able to be a certain way inside. And it wasn't until the year of 22, which if you're listening to this now, go back and listen to episode 1 where I really went deep into this, that I started to crack myself open in all the ways where I actually started to understand not only on like cognitive level, but on a soul deep body knowing level of like, wow, this is why I'm here and this is what I'm here to do. And, when you come into my world, this is what we often talk about is your story is literally the greatest source of your power, the greatest source of your power, especially when you can transmute and you know how to do this, transmute the pain of your story or the experience of your story into power energy, then into purpose energy. And I'm going to take you deeper into a component of my story tonight and today that I really started to crack me open and really did crack me open in this moment. Because if I'm honest, I had heard this and I know this, that the brain is a meaning making machine. Literally a meaning making machine. And we're going to deepen into this today. It's a meaning making machine and it only gives you your life. It doesn't give you life. It gives you your version of this. And we're going to nerd out on neuro in a minute. For a minute, this is your reticular activating system. It literally takes 100% of the information that's out there and it filters it down to 10% that you can be consciously aware of. And this 10% is filtered through you. It's filtered through your belief systems. It's filtered through the programs for which you believe life should unfold. It's filtered through what you think should happen based on what you've experienced in your past. This is why if you have a different internal structure, you end up getting a very, very different external world because this is how the brain actually gives you your world. Remember, nothing's actually happening outside you. It's not happening outside you. And neuroscience really backs this up. Like there's no color out there. It's your brain perceiving something which is giving you the color of what it thinks it should look like based on the neural activations in your brain. Isn't that friggin' incredible? Every single stimulus out there literally gets converted into electrical signals within your brain. Touch, light, temperature, taste, sight. It all happens internally. We just live in this incredible physical world where we actually think it's out there and not within. So this gets to be super, super powerful. But my main point here is that the life that we're seeing isn't actually the life that is. There is so much out there that is inaccessible to us if the filter is not congruent with what we want to see. And this is really the baseline of why I created my entire Inner CEO program, because what I found is that this transformational journey I have been on has not been a result of changing anything externally or even trying to change anything externally. It's literally been as a result of changing everything internally for me. And you listening to this in this moment, you may have heard this as before. Like it's all an inner game, as within, so without. I think I said that in the first episode. It's like, what does it mean, Courtney? Oh, let's go deeper on this. And this is what I'm going to share with you today, is that your brain is only showing you your version of the events, your version of the events. And when you get to access your metacognition, your awareness of your awareness, your prefrontal cortex, what I love to call, because it really embodies the soul and the brain and the science and all the parts of us, the inner CEO, the one that gets to choose, the one that gets to observe, you then see that the story that your default brain is telling you is not the true story. It's the true story based on what past evidence has given it. That's it. That's why it comes through so quickly, that unconscious stream of thoughts and, dialogue and narrative about what's going on. It comes through so fast because it's based on the past. And the past looks like evidence. And it looks like evidence because it backs itself up based on what the filter is telling it. I want to say that again. It feels like evidence because it's the evidence of what the filter is giving it. This is kind of like the chicken and the egg scenario, right? Like which comes first, the chicken or the egg? What happens is when we're little, life starts to come in, we develop a filter for it, meaning like, I'm not safe in the world. And then the brain, the reticular activating system, continues to give you the evidence for I am not safe in the world. And then you develop a whole belief system around, which feels like the truth because there's so much evidence for it, because the brain is only going to filter the reality through that filter and only giving you the evidence for that belief system, which is I'm not safe in the world. And so when we start to see this, when we really start to see that, okay, let me get curious here. If my brain isn't showing me the world, it's showing me my version of the world, and my internal dialogue, these thought stream that's coming through is literally just a narrative of the past. What else can be possible if I start to see this about myself? What else can be possible when I start to see that I have a lens of life, that I am not my lens of life? And if you're listening to this and you're like, give me more, give me a practice, start to observe what your brain is telling you and what you're actually reacting to, because it's very rare that we're actually reacting to the life that's coming into us and more about the story of the life that's coming into us. Like you can go outside, for example, right now, and you probably have a reaction to the weather, really, depending on what your thoughts and judgments and beliefs are about weather. A lot of people believe that the rain is wrong for some reason, that it's a miserable day if there's clouds in the sky, or if it's meant to rain, or if it's been rainy. We'll literally look outside and be like, oh, it's a miserable day today, and call in a miserable day based on there being a higher density of clouds, certain molecules in the sky versus less. What? Isn't that wild? And not only that, you may actually even have an internal physiological response to the density of the clouds in the sky. And you'll probably have a higher physiological response to the density of the clouds in the sky if it's a day of significance for you, such as your wedding or the birth of your child or the weekend versus a Monday, whatever it might be. My point being is that it's just the life that you're seeing, but you're not actually responding to the clouds. You're responding to the judgment of the clouds that's showing up in your mind. You're responding to the judgment of the rain that's showing up in your mind. It's very rare that you're just seeing the clouds. You're responding to what this is telling you about the clouds and what it's fitting into its framework and its blueprint of the past. This is super powerful when we start to see this. So start to get curious in this now moment. What am I actually reacting to? Am I reacting to the life or am I reacting to the thoughts about the life that's happening? When you start to see that you're reacting to the thoughts about the life that's happening and not the life that's happening, you activate your inner CEO. You're in your gentle observer. You're in the one that gets to choose. When you are the thoughts, you are the thoughts, you have to react. That's the way it works. You're in survival self. You're in the default. When you see the thoughts as the thoughts and that your body wants to react to the thoughts, but you're no longer the thoughts, what do you have automatically? You have spaciousness. You have spaciousness to choose. You have spaciousness to respond. And a higher level version of this, you have spaciousness to design. And this is where it gets to be really fun because not only now is your internal state being created, but the action as a result of this internal state is being created. So how did I crack this for me? How did I crack this? Let's put this into a real world, real life, go to the depths, tell us everything, Courtney. We are here for the unfiltered version of this. So this is me as a psychologist, as a neuropsychologist with all this experience, having the biggest year of her life. And something I didn't share by design in the first episode was what happened 3 weeks after my dad died. And this is such a pivotal part in the journey, right? This is such a pivotal part because not only in this stage had I lost my sister, had a baby, lost my dad, this next part was still waiting for me. And as I shared, the filter of my life back then was that I am divinely cursed forever. And I was obviously like the worst person in the world in a past life. And I cannot believe that I have this much karma to contend with, which look, may still very much be a truth. I don't know what your thoughts about karma are, but here for it, right? But what ended up happening 3 weeks is actually what felt at the time like a silver bullet. It literally broke my heart. And I'm going to get into the why of it, but it actually ended up, if I'm honest, being the greatest gift of my life. And I'm incredibly grateful for my dad. I'm incredibly grateful. It makes me emotional for, the soul contract that we had together. I'm incredibly grateful for everything he did for me during his lifetime, for every opportunity he gave me, for how big his heart was in a lot of ways. And really, this is the most grateful gift that he gave me, the best gift that I'm most grateful for that he gave me. And it wasn't at the time, let me tell you, at all. At all. But this is it, right? Like we get to choose our lens on life, right? And we get to see. And I just want to disclaim this before I get into this story. When I say that, like I get to choose my lens on life, this is not the positive psychology, just be happy you're alive. Someone else has got it worse. This is not that. This is choosing your story and choosing your experience in such a deep way and being so responsible for it that you are automatically in your inner CEO. That everything that fucking comes into my reality is for me to grow. That everything that comes into my reality is delivered here by design for me to grow. This is not it's okay, I'll get over it. Time happened and my heart healed type of like timeline. No. I chose this and I chose this experience and I'm grateful for this experience in every single cell of my body. And even me saying that, I've had moments where I'm like, really do you believe that? And life has given me, another moment of life where something else has happened. And I was like, no, I actually really believe this. There's no internal activation anymore telling me I should be ashamed of this experience or not, publicly talking about this experience or anything like that. It's actually one of my greatest gifts. And so 3 weeks after the death of my dad and we've, gone through the I was going to say ceremony then, the service and the funeral. And to disclaim, it was a complicated relationship, right? As all, or not all, but as a lot of parent-child relationships are, there's a lot of layers and there's a lot of lenses that I know now. And there's a lot of belief systems and there's a lot of entanglement and there's a lot of humanness and there's a lot of, ancestral wounding and there's a lot of energy. And all of this is in relationships. All of it's in relationships. And I didn't know this at the time. And so, 3 weeks, 4 weeks after he'd passed, I was standing outside on our deck in our house in Melbourne, because we were in Melbourne at the time. And I think my youngest was, maybe 9 months at this stage, and my eldest was nearly three, or had just turned three, actually. He'd just turned three. It was shortly after his birthday. So it would have actually been in the November. And I get an email come through from my dad's solicitor, I think, a solicitor it was. And it was his will. And I remember opening up the will, and there had been some stickiness around this. My sister had asked for it a few weeks earlier, and there had just been some stickiness with the relationships. So we were kind of anticipating that there was something in here that either we didn't want to see or we shouldn't see, or it was just like a very complicated couple of weeks. And in the will, it listed all these beneficiaries and not myself and not my sister. And I think one of the hardest things, or the hardest thing about this moment, was actually the date, that he had updated the date of this after my sister had passed, and that this was a very deliberate decision. This wasn't something that he obviously thought about lightly or that wasn't done by design. This was a really designed moment. And it was so heartbreaking in that moment. I remember jumping on the phone to my sister, and she was obviously devastated and I was devastated. But that higher self, only what I can call the higher self, came in, and I was just remember saying to her on repeat, like, this is a good thing, this is a good thing, this is a good thing, this is a good thing. I was probably really, if I think about it, in shock, but it felt like that higher self message of like, this is going to be a good thing. This is going to be a good thing. And I hung up the phone to her. I rang my mom. She was in disbelief. And one of the biggest hesitations for me initially sharing this story, I share this story very openly now. It was, as I said, it was such a big cracking open for me. It's such a pivotal part of this. One of the biggest hesitations I had for initially sharing this was the shame around people thinking that you just want the money and you were in it for the money, and whatever transpired afterwards because they didn't get the money. And it was just so deep, and it really shows that not only the collective conditioning around money and shame, but that I couldn't share this part of the journey because it was so fucking shameful. Like, who gets cut out of a will, really? Who gets cut out of a will by a biological parent and you were there till the end? Like, it's not like we had periods of not talking, but you were essentially there to the end. And it was such an interesting experience. Like, looking back, it was such an interesting experience because it was, if I had a fear, that was probably my greatest fear. It was probably my greatest fear, to be invalidated in that way, where you, again, are not chosen so deeply and in such a pivotal part of someone's journey. You are not the one that is chosen. And so for a lot of time, I had a lot of shame around sharing it, thinking about it, talking about it, because of the money piece. I didn't want people to think that I was just someone that wanted someone else's money. And when I really started to sit with this, because this fucked me, like, after everything, this was the activation energy that I spoke about in the first episode that was like, we've got to get out of here. Within a couple of weeks, we had literally packed up the house. It was on the market. We were going to Queensland. Like, this was our silver bullet out. It was so, the pain of it was so big on top of everything else that it fully catapulted me into another state, even with kids and moving and everything, right? I laugh about it now, but I was like, whoa, that was the rocket. That was literally the rocket ship of 2022. And it was amazing because that was one of the hardest pills to swallow. And I was like in such this internal bind of, how do I process this and also feel the shame and the weight, and it's money and it's sticky and all this fucking rubbish, right? And it was amazing because one day I was sitting there and I was reading the book Energy Codes by Dr. Sumorta. Insane. And I'm reading this book, and this is months later, right? Like, I've had my cracked open at this stage. I'm going to take you back to that moment, but I want to jump forward a minute. This is probably, a year after I really started cracking myself open. I'm reading this book, Energy Codes, and Sue Morta, she's absolutely fabulous. Go and have a look at her work if you don't know her. I'm reading her book, Energy Codes, and I couldn't fucking believe it. At the start of her book, what does she talk about? She talks about in detail opening up her father's will, someone that she thought she was so close with, that was literally an icon for her, that, she based so much of her life off and so much of her work off and, so much of her identity off. And I was like, I see you deeply, girlfriend, right there with you. Like, I literally asked my dad, should I be a chiropractor? He was a chiropractor. He's like, no, go do neuroscience. And that's what I went and did. Like, forever grateful again. It's got me where I am now. And she was also cut out of her dad's will. And I remember opening up my laptop in that moment. I opened it up so quickly and I emailed her. I've never heard back to this day. Maybe she'll watch this one day and be like, I need to write back to that woman. And I was like, you won't believe this. I've just read your book. I've read the intro and this is exactly what happened to me. And I said, thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing this. Thank you for sharing this. And the reason I thanked her so deeply and thank her so deeply in this now moment wasn't because there was someone else out there that had it cut out of a will. It was because she articulated the feeling of it. And I was like, that's what it was. It wasn't the money. And I knew it wasn't the money. I knew it wasn't, but I couldn't articulate what it was. And in her book, and she writes this so profoundly, she said, it felt like the ultimate withdrawal of love. And my whole body reading that, it just washed over me. And I was like, that's what it was. So much of my worth had been defined in my dad, and so much of my worth had been defined in the money that he gave me. And as I said at the start, he was a very generous man. This was the love language, right? If I was in the nest, that's what was flowing. If I wasn't, that wasn't what was flowing. And so this in like black and white paper for my brain, for my filter, was you are unlovable. You are unlovable to your core. That a parent, a biological parent that is supposed to be wired, and it makes me emotional connecting deep into this, does not love you. And you are unlovable. And that was the shame. It wasn't that I didn't get money. I was like, how do I fucking carry that I'm here on this earth and I'm only in my 30s? And now I have the nail in the coffin evidence that I am, by definition, unlovable. And it was insane when I read that book and when I read those words, because I was like, whoa, that was the lens. That was the lens. And I'd seen this before, but I hadn't articulated what the pain was for me yet until I read that book and saw that's what the feeling was. It felt like the ultimate withdrawal of love. And another layer came through where I got to choose the story again. I got to recreate. I got to see. But the first time I did this, and this is the point that I wanted to take you through, the first time that I saw that this was the greatest gift for me, as I mentioned earlier, was probably about a year before, where I was sitting very, very shortly after the will had happened. We had moved to Queensland at this stage, and I was sitting breastfeeding my youngest son in the darkness, just like putting him off to sleep. And I was rocking in our beautiful, postpartum rocking chair at this stage, and I'm feeding him to sleep, and I am just crying at this point. The tears are endless. I'm sitting in the darkness. I'm doing those sobs. I couldn't be with the weight of everything that had happened, but really that moment. And I, very early on in, after 2022, early 2023, a lot of the biggest questions that I would ask myself is why? Like, why me? Like, what did I do wrong? I was always like the good girl and the people pleaser. And this is obviously where I came up with the idea that I was cursed. I was like, why? And in this moment, sitting in the darkness, breastfeeding my son, I was asking myself a different question. I was asking how. I was sitting there rocking and I was like, how am I going to hold this? How do you hold this? How do you hold the weight of being cut out of a will? How do you hold the weight of being this unworthy? How? And I'm crying because I'm like, oh my gosh, not only do I have to hold it now, I have to hold this until I die. I have to hold this shame of what happened to me literally until I die. And I'm only 36 at this point. Literally, that's what I was thinking. I was like, how do I hold this? I already have so much to hold. And in this moment, my metacognition kicked in. My inner CEO came in. My prefrontal cortex came in. And it said, if you are asking how to hold this, what does that mean by definition, really? If I'm asking how do I hold something, what does that give me instantly? It gave me choice. If I'm asking how to hold it, there is another timeline that exists that I get to let it go. And in that moment, everything was illuminated. And I was like, if I'm asking myself how to hold this, equally there's a choice that I get to let it go. And so why wouldn't I then let it go? And the weight that was released in that moment of my brain literally saying, hey, you actually don't have to hold this. That's one timeline here. I was like, what? I don't have to hold this. And then I started seeing, well, what if it didn't mean that I was deeply unworthy? Sue Morter gave me the understanding of the feeling a year later. But in this moment, I was like, what if it didn't mean I was unworthy? What if it means that, hurt people hurt people? I was like, maybe hurt people just hurt people. And I know my dad was hurt. He had a huge life. He had a huge upbringing. He came from poverty in Scotland. He was, went through horrific experiences growing up as a child. He had a lot of trauma he may not have processed. I was like, hurt people hurt people. And then all of a sudden, another wave of weightlessness came over me. And I was like, what if this had nothing to do with my worth? What if I had an experience of where I was cut out of a will and that was just having the experience? What if I was worthy on arrival? This is where it got to start being really fun. So what if I was worthy on arrival? And all of a sudden, my body started to get this feeling, these tingles. I was like, this feels pretty good. What if I'm worthy on arrival and my worth is non-negotiable? What if I'm worthy on arrival and my worth is non-negotiable and every single moment I'm fucking dripping in gold? That's how much worth there is. Who does she show up as? The one that's worthy on arrival. Dripping in gold. No permission needed from anyone. Whether I'm worthy, I get to choose. And I'm sitting there and all of a sudden my baby's asleep on me and I'm having this experience of like, holy fuck, I get to choose it. I get to choose it. I get to choose it. And so then I kept choosing and choosing and choosing higher and higher and higher and higher and higher levels of what my fucking story meant. And all of a sudden, the will was the best thing that ever happened to me. It released me from a lot of binds. It released me from a lot of relationships. It released me from a lot of circumstances in life that I probably wouldn't have had the bravery to walk away from because I was so entangled in my default self, so entangled in my survival self, so entangled in my people pleaser. I wouldn't have had the strength to move away from. And so now the reality that I was living into is that hurt people hurt people. I'm worthy on arrival, dripping in gold, literally no permission needed ever. And this is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. The greatest thing that ever happened to me. Because all of a sudden I could talk about the stuff that I couldn't talk about. All of a sudden I could claim the story as a thing that gave me power, not the thing that I was going to carry around in my energetic suitcase of pain for the next 70 years. And in that moment, I chose that it happened for me to grow. Within like 3 minutes, I was thanking my dad. I didn't go through a massive fucking forgiveness strategy. I didn't go through anything. I felt the energy around the weight of the experience. That's a big piece of this. I felt the energy around the pain and I recreated it for myself. And I literally sit here, every cell of my body in agreement that it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I've only ever been given more and more evidence that that is the truth. That is the truth, that it shouldn't have happened any other way than the way it happened. Otherwise, it would have happened another way. That it was the greatest gift, that he released the shackles, that hurt people, that my worth is undefinable outside of what I say it is. What a fucking incredible experience. What an incredible part of the story. And so with this lens, right, and this is what I want to share with you today. I didn't only start doing this for my 2022 year. I've had a big journey. I'm an old soul, let's say. I chose in my energetic, bus stop up there. Yes, I want a level 10 of pain. I want a level 10 of this. Give me all the experiences for my soul to evolve in this lifetime. Give me the nervous system understanding so I can help people expand their own nervous systems, but give me the experience of doing it for myself first. And so, with that, with this lens of like, oh, now I understand I'm a meaning making machine. Now I understand that if I hold the lens of I am deeply unworthy, this is the ultimate withdrawal of love. I will never get over this. This is the worst thing that ever happened. This shouldn't have happened. I'm going to have a certain internal experience. My body is going to meet my mind. My mind is going to meet my body. And with that energy, I'm going to create my reality. But what fun is that unless you're choosing something that empowers you? What fun is that if you are on the downward energetic trajectory of life? Why? We choose that because we think we should choose that. You see someone that had a 2022 like me and you're like, oh, she's pretty, that's pretty hard. I don't think she'll ever get over it. We learn the helplessness of people's circumstances by design. So we stay helpless. This is why when you come into my world, you can tell me any single story and I still see you in your highest power, always, in all the ways, because you only get served by life what you are capable of holding and moving through and transmuting from pain to power to purpose. And I know this because I've had a lot of shit to transmute, right? So all of a sudden, I didn't only choose that I had a lens and see that I had a lens, but I started to recreate the lens. And if I'm honest, this is the point where everything started to explode. Because if you're not someone that's hiding your unworthiness, how do you show up? What do you do? If I know I'm worthy on arrival, I create a podcast because I know there's people out there that want to listen. If I know I'm worthy on arrival, I go and put my magic business into the world because I know there's people to serve. If I know I'm worthy on arrival, I charge the prices that are an energetic exchange, a clean energetic exchange to the transformation I allow my clients to experience through my work, through my experience. When I'm worthy on arrival, I show up in my relationship differently. I show up in my, friendships differently. I show up in being a parent differently. And nothing happened. And this is a really key point that I want to drive home today is that nothing happened outside of me. No one knocked on my door and said, hey, Courtney, I just want you to know that you are worthy on arrival and it's okay. You can choose to let this go. I chose this and I chose it again and I chose it again. And when the pain came up, when there was any residual energy from this experience that came up that life showed me in the moments that started to come through, I went through the same process. I felt the feeling, and this is what I teach now inside all my programs, my Pause to Power. I felt the feeling. I let it release from my body. I came back to neutrality and I choose the story of the experience. I choose the story of it. And a byproduct of this, which is super powerful, is that you actually stop stacking. I stacked a lot. If Matt came home and tried, we had an argument very early on in these grief days. I was like, there's laundry here, and my sister died, and I had a baby, and this, and I got kind of a will. And there was all this energetic compounding. And I was like, why do I feel so tired all the time? I was hanging on to this energetic suitcase being like, you've got to come everywhere with me. You are me. No, fuck no. Let that shit go. And so when I started to do this and I started to take myself through this process over and over again and started to actively create my lens, things started to move really, really quickly. And this is something that I couldn't see before. This is something I couldn't see that I hadn't experienced. I thought I was my story. And you may still be having this experience now where you think you are your story. You think you are the things that happen to you. I'm going to share in later episodes, or I may even share in the first, about me climbing the mountain in darkness and being like, who you are is not what happens to you. It's everything you become in the process of what happens. Who you are is not what happens to you. You are having the experience, you are not the experience. You are having the thought, you are not the thought. You are having the belief, you are not the belief. You are having the emotion, you are not the emotion. You're the one having it. I had an experience of being cut out of a will. That was an interesting experience in hindsight. Again, I don't want to diminish the bigness of some moments of life because they are a lot for our nervous systems to take in. And that was a lot for my nervous system to take in. I couldn't have this conversation 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whenever it happened. This has taken me being like, whoa, let me move this energy, let me shift this lens. But the biggest piece here that I want you to take away is that exactly. Your story is a story. And your story is a version of events that you layered meaning onto, meaning that there is something that you experienced. Baseline. You had an experience. Then you layered the meaning of the experience. Thank God I've got long arms on top of it. And then your identity does not believe the experience, it believes the meaning of the experience. I am unworthy. I am unlovable. I'm not enough. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. We have a negativity bias. That's why your brain creates the negativity, right? Because we've got a negativity bias to help us survive. We don't want it to be positive when we're surviving in the jungle and be like, there's no tiger. Let's just tap into the highest timeline. We want it to be like, there might be a tiger down there. That's why it's negative. Not because you are any of these negative things. It's because your brain is literally wired for survival. And it's going to give you the negative meaning of the circumstances of your life. When we bring it down to this simplicity, you can start to see that every single circumstance in your life can actually fuel your power, can fuel you to move in a way that is incongruent from who you think you are. And to give you this piece before we close up today, this is what I started to do. I questioned everything. Everything. Well, maybe that moment when I was 3 didn't mean that. What else could it mean? Maybe that moment when I was 8 didn't mean that. What else could that mean? Maybe that moment didn't mean that. What else could it mean? And I broke it down belief by belief by belief. And I released the energy surrounding the event and I moved in a way that was congruent with the new belief. This is how I've gotten on a quantum timeline. This is how you get on quantum timelines. You start to see that the version of events that your brain is giving you is always going to be from the default. You don't listen to this. This is past. This is survival. You listen to this. And you only listen to this if you're the one in control of it. If you're the one saying, oh my gosh, the will is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. The greatest thing. 2022 is a year that cracked me open. I'm so grateful for my grief. I'm so grateful for my story. I'm so grateful for my experiences. I think that we would be shocked if we understood on the level that we could as humans, how powerful we actually are in creating the reality that we are currently a part of. And this is the work that I do, and this is the work I will forever do now in helping people understand the level of depth and power that you have. And this is one of the first parts. I am not my story. I have a story, and I'm actually the one holding the pen. So I'm the one that gets to say what the story was and how the story is going to unfold. I don't get to believe the default. I don't have to believe the default. I get to create what I want to create. And this starts by seeing what is the default telling me that may not actually be true. Let me get curious. Let me get curious about how I see life. Let me get curious about my lens now that I know I have one. And if I could choose, what would I want to make it mean? Write a good fucking story. And you get better at this. Remember, this isn't, and I really want to disclaim this. I've had these aha moments. Like I've had the aha moment in the, breastfeeding my son, being like, holy shit, I don't have to choose this. I get to choose something else. I've had the aha moment reading Sue Morter's book, like, fuck yes. It was ultimate withdrawal of love. That's really what it felt like for me, being able to be with that part of me that felt like she wasn't lovable again. We have these aha moments and then you rewire it in. You do the reps. I'm going to do a whole episode on reps and repetition because you've repeated this version of you for a really long time and that's okay. There's nothing bad and wrong with it. But you're pretty good at being you by this point. You're really habitual. We all are. We're just a series of habits. So if you've been, being habitual in I'm not worthy habit, or for me, like I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, give yourself a bit of grace to start repeating another version of you. This is where it gets to be super fun, where you get to learn that you get to rewire and process after you make a decision of I am fucking worthy on arrival. I am fucking lovable. I am, divine being. I'm a worthy, wealthy woman. Whatever you want to choose for yourself, you get to make that decision and you get to rewire it in. So, thank you so much for taking your time to listen. I deeply appreciate it. I was absolutely blown away with how many of you listened to the first episode, and I'm going to keep this coming. It's such a powerful conversation that we need to be having with how we are so powerful and how the circumstances of our life in particular don't actually get to dictate where we're going. They don't at all. It's absolutely irrelevant. Anything that happened before this moment of now and that continues to be the past version is actually irrelevant in terms of deciding where you get to go and what you get to create for your life. And seeing that now with so many of my clients and also having it so embodied within my own human experience now, it's like, oh, the past actually has nothing to do with the future unless you are actively, as I've described, bringing the past in and projecting it onto a new moment of now. So, thank you for listening. I love you. I will see you for episode 3.